Welcome to the Peaceful Birth Podcast.
Hi, happy to be here. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Just, kind of getting into the swing of the new year again
Uh-huh.
after the holidays.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Same here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a transition. I think we need a week where we all go to work half time
Yes,
after the holidays.
that's a great idea. That
Could
would
be
be
nice.
really nice. Well, I'm so happy to have you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I wonder if you want to start by sharing a little bit about what IFS is, and about you and your work and your passions, things like that.
Of course. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work at a private practice outside of Seattle, Washington. My passions, as weird as it sounds, is just studying psychology and the concept of trauma and healing and identity. And I absolutely adore all the people I work with. And IFS is probably the therapy model I am the most passionate about. It is so good on so many different fronts. It is a trauma informed model, which is why I love it. And it's also an abstract model while giving you some guidelines. The things you could do with IFS are really open ended, which is what I like about it because you can really tailor it to each unique individual and their experiences, how they perceive their own internal world, the external world. And I think that's what I love about it. So diving into what IFS is the internal family systems therapy. It was developed by Richard Schwartz, also a licensed marriage and family therapist. He currently runs the IFS Institute. Kind of to break down the model as simply as I can put it, internal family systems operates on the idea of multiplicity of self, and that we are all a slightly different version of ourself, where I'm different with my friends versus my boss versus family, different social situations. You're a slightly different version. And so a common misconception is that's multiple personality disorder or something like that. And that's, that's a separate thing altogether. But this idea of multiplicity of self, that we have different parts of who we are, and those different parts hold on to different narratives, different experiences, and they each step forward to inform the self, to guide us through life. The kind of four main concepts of IFS are first the idea of self or self leadership. So, who you are at your core. And self is associated with the 8 C's of self, which are calm, curiosity, courage, clarity, confidence, creativity, connectedness, and compassion. I think I got all of those 8 C's in there. And when a person feels that those aspects are present, that's how they know their self leadership. And so within self, the whole thing are these three different parts, in two kind of different categories. So first there are exiles, and those are not fun. Those are the parts of ourself that we want to push down and hide away from. Those can be traumas, embarrassment, rage, things that just cause distress to feel. And so the other two types of parts, or their protectors, if you will, are firefighters and managers. And so the system has these protectors for these exiles to protect the whole system from what those exiles could be holding on to because they cause so much distress. Your first line of defense, if you will, is a manager part. And their job is to give you skills every day to keep the exiles from being poked. If you had a fear of failure, maybe that manager part helps you become a really studious person who's on top of homework and deadlines and all of that, right? To keep that fear of failure from ever coming up. Your second line of defense, of course, is a firefighter. Those come in once those exiles have been poked. So you get an F on a test, right? A firefighter is going to come in and be like, put out the fire any way possible. it feels really impulsive or chaotic, and that can be things like binge eating, drinking, shopping, video games, dissociation, um, anything that will just ease the fire from from burning the whole system down, right? And so you've got this concept of self as the whole entity, and then you've got your manager, firefighters, and exiles. And the goal with internal family systems is to bring awareness between the parts and get self to connect to the parts, to unblend them from self and validate them in a way that they can let go of potentially unhealthy roles of protecting you. So the whole system kind of becomes, instead of a reactive system, it becomes a bit more of a dialogue, a bit more responsive. So instead of having a reaction right away, you can get curious with it and kind of, it's almost like sitting down at a table with all of your parts and having a discussion about it instead. And that's kind of the goal, is to bring self-leadership forward and to get all of those parts to trust self so you can lead with those 8 C's, like I mentioned.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. You captured it really beautifully. I love IFS so much, and it's something that I've used a lot to overcome my fears in my pregnancies. And it was introduced to me by you. And then I found an acupuncturist that also does some IFS work with her patients. So she really supported me with what you said. I like what you said, becoming unblinded, the self becoming unblinded. Was that what you said, to the parts?
Unblended.
Unblended. Oh, I thought it was
Unblended.
unblinded. And I was like, I like that too.
I
But
mean,
unblended.
unblinded too, right? You're becoming aware of what parts are there to begin with. So that does make sense as well.
Totally. Yeah. Well, the reason why I have you here today is because I would like to offer moms some kind of practice and a pathway to support them in feeling more confident and prepared for birth. I've supported several hundred families through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And the biggest hiccup that I see when someone, kind of goes down a path in their birth that they didn't really want to go down, stems all the way back to fear. And it's either fear leading us into the fear, pain, tension cycle, fear leading us to make choices from a place of fear rather than making choices deliberately from a place of love in alignment with our birth intention. We're feeling like our nervous system shuts down in the presence of someone like maybe bullying us or pressuring us into go down a path we don't want to go down, or get interventions we don't want to go down. And so all of it really stems all the way back to fear, that I find. Sometimes there's like specific tension in the body that we had a really hard time releasing and that led to a positioning issue or something like that. But really, most of the time, I find that it is fear. And we don't have a lot of support in Western culture around the emotional preparation piece of birth. You go to the hospital weekend birth class, or you take an online birth course, and you go see your provider, and there's a big focus on the medical and the physical, but there's definitely a gap in the Western medical model around supporting moms and how they're feeling when they prepare for this initiation into a new role in life, and they prepare to go through a very vulnerable experience where they don't have a lot of control. And some of the biggest fears I wrote down that I hear moms express to me is a fear of being vulnerable, a fear of being out of control, a fear of the unknown, a fear of pain, and a fear of something going wrong. So I've been supporting my moms with different techniques like guided meditations and talking through things, emotional freedom technique. And recently I started bringing up IFS because sometimes I notice that someone will say something like, maybe they'll recognize that they have a pattern of choosing what someone else wants them to do instead of honoring what it is that they really want to do because that has felt easier for them, for example. And so maybe a provider will say, like, I think you should do a 39-week induction. And then they say, well, I really, really want to go into labor spontaneously. That's so important to me. And in the presence of my provider, it just feels like easier to just like do what they want me to do. And then they bring some awareness. They recognize, like, this is a theme of my life that someone else tells me I need to do something one way, and I abandon what it is that I really want and I choose to do what they want me to do. And so I'm noticing this is a theme. And then I'll be like, have you heard of IFS? This might be another tool that could be really helpful. I am obviously limited in how deep I can guide people with this work because I've only experienced a little bit of it personally. It has been my favorite mental health tool, my favorite tool for growth, and I use it constantly myself. But I don't feel like I, right now, have the training to guide anyone through it anywhere near the capacity, that you, or to the depth really that you do. So I was hoping that I could have you come and share with us how you would support a mom who has fears, and if she were to be working with you, how you would help guide her through some of that. I know that's a really broad question, but I thought that's a good place to get started.
Oh yeah, no, and that's beautiful, and I do feel that this is a model that would be well suited for that kind of work. Because I mean, like some of the aspects that you just talked about of abandoning concepts of self to appease someone else or to make things easier is a really common trend. I mean, not just in becoming a parent or going through the birthing process, but also just something that comes up in therapy a lot. And I think there's so many different points I could start with what you just talked about. I think one of the first things that comes to mind is starting with the idea of awareness. How do you know what's going on? How do you know what to change or how to change it if you don't know what's there? And so being able to be curious, oh no, one of those 8 C's of self right there, right? Being curious with yourself and where are these things coming from? Whose voice is that? Who influenced that? Is really important for starting that process of being able to sit down and recognize what parts are actually in play to begin with, right? To a big extent, it's kind of like you started a company and you walked in and you gave everyone a role to do, and then you dipped out and you just left. And they're on autopilot. They're doing the job you originally gave them, but the job they had 15 years ago might not fit you now. But you have to go in there. You've got to go back to the company and be like, hey, what are you doing? What is your role now? And you have to update them. That first step is awareness of going back in there and seeing what is going on. Who are our key players? What are the roles that they have? And what needs to be updated, right? Otherwise, you might be like, why is this coming up? I don't know. And you just kind of blow it off and it will continue to come up, which kind of leads me to another point, that idea of why do I do this? That I think people get caught in of, why am I this way? Why did I say no when this was my plan and I was so ready to advocate for myself, and then I had a provider come in and suggest something else and I just was like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Like, and they're just like, wait, why did I do that? I think it's important to remember that our brains are programmed for survival, not to make us happy. Our brains are like pattern machines. They pick up on a pattern and they go, ooh, that works. Let's do that. And there you go. That's the pattern that your brain or that part will keep on autopilot until you go in there and you start talking with the part and you get it to realize, like, actually what we're doing is no longer a good fit. It's actually unhelpful, and here's something else you can do. And so I think, like I said, starting with awareness is the first thing. I think another really important aspect of doing IFS work is support. You were talking about how we have a really limited scope of practice in Western medicine for how we treat mothers. I think it's a little counterintuitive. We are communal creatures. We are supposed to have community. We're supposed to have people around us. And so trying to do things completely on your own and independently just doesn't work. You need people to advocate for you. You need systemic things in place to support you in being independent, right? There is a healthy level of codependence, contrary to popular. And so I think another aspect of that is accessing community and support and having people who can advocate for you while you're doing that work in sharing your work with other people. And so if a new mom was coming to me with all of these fears, as we work together, I would encourage her to open up to her partner or her support system on what she's identifying and how those parts show up and what she's trying to get those parts to do, or what roles she wants them to take on, so that they can support her in that process. So instead of that original example of a provider coming in and suggesting something else and them just going, oh yeah, sure, let's just do that, being able to have a partner that goes, hold on, pause. I know that you said that you do this. You're a people pleaser. You've got a people pleaser part, or you've got an inner critic part that says, no, 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 whatever the provider wants, right? You've said it. You've told me about it. Pause for a second. Let's think about it. And then they can help advocate. They can help you pause so you can bring awareness again, right? You need another person sometimes. I mean, we can do things on our own, but boy, is it nice to have someone else, right? And so, yeah, I think I would start with that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really powerful, and I feel like you spoke exactly to, like, if I was a pregnant mom, I'd be like, "Oh, wow." That's really helpful. So, my next question would be, if a mom had a really bad fear of birth right now, let's say, like, even if she did not have a traumatic birth before, but she has a bunch of fears coming up right now, how would IFS explain what is happening, what she's experiencing?
Oh, good question. I think with that, it's important to remember that exiles are, it's like the equivalent of putting something in the box, duct taping it shut, and throwing it in the basement and throwing away the key. They're down there, and they have a message, and it's powerful, and it leaks through, and it still impacts the whole system. But there's this disconnect between us and what those exiles are. And those exiles are fears, like we were talking about. It can be the fear of vulnerability, the fear of pain, the fear of something going wrong. For a mom who's worried and has this anxiety that something is going to go wrong, is very fearful of it. But I'd say open the basement, unwrap the box, let's see what's in there. Which, I mean, takes having a safe space and having that support to do. But once you're in there, it's the idea of building trust between you and this exiled part, this wound, if you will. And so a mother who's like, I'm afraid of pain. I would go, okay, let's talk about that. What memories come up? Are there any narratives that you're holding on to see if we can exile any or access anything from that exile? Because that exile is holding on to those narratives and things that influence that fear to begin with. And it could be something that happened when you were 5 years old. It could be something that seems irrelevant to us in our adult life, but was really impactful as a child. But that part has been locked away for so long in its box in the basement, it doesn't know things have changed. It doesn't know that you're actually 32 years old and you have a great supportive partner, right? It's like, no, I'm 8 and I just got pushed off the monkey bars and the dog ate my ice cream and my world is collapsing, right? It could, not saying it's always something as lighthearted as that, of course, but that exile doesn't know. And so it would be creating this relationship of trust between self and the exile, for the exile to share its narratives and to be seen and validated and updated. I think that's the other thing, is that updating process of, yes, this feels scary, but look, we're safe. Here's how we're safe. And that exile is going to be like, okay, prove it, right? And then you have to go in and you have to prove it. This is how I'm safe. Here's what I have. Here's all the support systems that I have in place. And so being curious with what that exile is holding on to and creating an environment where you can actually kind of get down through those parts to the exile and hear it out. Where is that fear coming from? But of course, in the IFS process, that means you have to get past the manager and the firefighter, those protective parts that are in place to keep the exile from coming up, right? And so a mom trying to learn where her fear is coming from might have to work with that manager part first, or that firefighter part first. And I think it brings forth one of the more powerful questions in IFS, which is talking to those protective parts and being like, what if I did do X, Y, and Z? And what if I didn't do X, Y, and Z, right? So perhaps that manager part just helps the mom avoid going to the doctor altogether. They cancel their appointments, or they might have that kind of a self-sabotage, if you will. They shut down, they don't vocalize what they want. You have to ask that part, okay, well, what would happen if I did? What would happen if I did advocate for myself? What would happen if I did show up? And then kind of following that train of thinking and that thought process all the way down to the exile that action is protecting ultimately.
That was so helpful. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what I am gathering so far is, first, we want to be curious. We want to have support in doing this, and we want to build awareness to the different parts in us that are exiled. And so then what I'm hearing you say to do that would be, if we notice something like this pop up, using the example of like provider wants to do a 39-week routine, non-medically indicated induction, mom really wants to go into labor spontaneously, but has a pattern of like abandoning what it is that she wants to just like do what the provider wants, or do what the partner, whoever it is, wants, and that feels easier, and maybe it feels really scary to choose to do the thing that she wants to do. So in that situation, mom would go, okay, I'm going to ask myself, what if I did advocate for myself? What if I did tell my provider I want to go into labor spontaneously? And then kind of follow that train down, all the way down, and that's the ladder that takes you down to or the elevator that takes you down to the exile part. So we are like kind of like asking ourselves that question, like, if that were to happen, like what would happen? And then maybe we'll hear like, oh, then this could happen or that could happen. So that's like taking us deeper and deeper. And then what do we do once we feel like we've kind of had a light bulb moment and we're like, oh, I'm so terrified that whatever, I won't be treated. Maybe I'm just coming up with an example. I'll be abandoned if I like make my own choice, and I'm safer. I feel safer by following what other people want me to do. That helps me feel safer. And I'm afraid I'm going to be abandoned. Now we probably found it. So now what the heck do we do? I remember you said a little bit about like, we want to validate it and show it that we are safe, but maybe you could take us through that a little bit more, so there's kind of like a clear step by step moms can try on their own at home.
Mm-hmm. And also, perfect summary of that, right? That's a absolutely wonderful example. And like I said, that asking, okay, well, what if I did? It does kind of lead you down to, well, okay, what is that fear? Oh, that I'll be abandoned, or I'll be seen as selfish, or anything like that. And that's usually the message that an exile is holding on to. And so I will always encourage one, sometimes IFS work or any kind of trauma work it's like stirring a pot that hasn't been stirred in a long time, and a whole bunch of stuff comes up to the surface, and it can be distressing. And so that's why that support system is so important. First, get a therapist. Identify your really good support system to go through that process. And the other thing I'd encourage is something that Richard Schwartz really emphasizes, is getting permission from those protective parts first, because otherwise they're not going to step aside. They don't want you to go down there. And sometimes people they'll try and go through that process, and all of a sudden their thought will be derailed, and they're like, oh wait, what was I saying? And sometimes that is a firefighter coming in and going, nope, back off, you can't go there. And so I would say the first thing is, other than getting a good supportive environment, is to make sure that you've got permission from those protective parts and work your way through them first. They need to learn to trust self. They need to trust you, because at some point they learned, uh, unconsciously or not, that they needed to keep you safe. And so they have to trust you in order to step aside to show you the exile that they're protecting you from. And so working with those things first, recognizing what is my reaction to this? Did I just get really impulsive? Did I just get defensive? And starting to work through those things. But like with what you're saying, once you're able to make your way down and you get to that exile of, oh, if I advocate for myself, my provider is going to think the worst things of me and ultimately they're going to abandon me. They're not going to respect me, right? And you get down to that exile, it's kind of like you got to climb down in the hole with the exile and sit with it, which is usually very uncomfortable, but it is transformational when you can do that and sit with that part. And so this is where that abstract, if it wasn't already abstract enough, kind of comes into play, is an exile and all of the other parts, they have their own personalities, if you will. So some people might go down and they'll be like, oh, this exile around abandonment, it's a 5-year-old version of me, right? And that's, you can relate that to the idea of an inner child in a lot of other therapy models, of, this is that really angry teenage version of me. Where is that coming from? And so that curiosity and a little bit of that creativity comes into place here of giving that exile the microphone, so to speak, and just introduce yourself and be like, hey, I'm so and so. I'm actually this old. Here's what's going on in my life. And just introduce yourself to the exile. Befriend the exile. That's a big part of IFS, is befriending your parts in order to build that trust. Showing it that you're a safe person, right? Otherwise, that 5-year-old, that angry teenager is going to be like, yeah, who are you? Why are you here? I'm sorry. And so going in there and working on befriending. And so maybe sitting and just being curious with what that part is holding on to. Hey, who are you? Here's who I am. And letting it kind of speak to you. Have it tell you what it holds on to. Maybe it's like, oh yes, or I'm the color green, or I feel like slime. Sometimes it's not necessarily a 5-year-old girl. It can feel like something completely different, which is where the beauty of IFS kind of comes in on being so individualized. But going down there, introduce yourself. I would say just share a little bit of who you are and give the exile room to speak back. What is it holding on to? Does it have a name? Does it have an age? Does it have any stories it wants to share? And listen to that first. I think that's the first step, is being curious and just sit with it and befriend it. That's kind of that first thing.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, this model, I just want to pause to talk about this, is so aligned with the work I do already, to like turn towards our fear. You know, that's what I really like to support moms in doing, and to build a relationship with their fear. And instead of resisting it, and, you know, we like are living our lives and then we're like, oh, what if I tear? And then we're like, ah, go away thought, you know, and then we keep living our lives and then we're like, what if I have a C-section? And it's like, and we don't really know what to do when we have those thoughts come up. And I, you know, noticed that when moms go into birth just hoping for the best, with those thoughts like still kind of on the back burner, like they still have attention on them, but they're like, kind of go away. You know, we go in expending a lot of energy resisting our fear when we could any moment choose to make it so much easier for us just by dropping the resistance and turning towards it. And that's why I love IFS, because it offers this really specific way to turn towards your fear, in such a beautiful, compassionate, and healing way. I have not found a model that accelerates healing for me personally so quickly than to like turn towards my fear, but then find where this part of me is coming from. And so what I have been doing is when I like connect to that part and I sit there and I notice sometimes the part is like crying or she's really angry. And then I validate. And I think that you said that earlier. I'll say, like, it's okay to be sad. Like, I see that you're angry. You can be angry. And I just hold space for them to process whatever it is that they're feeling. And I witness that. And then once I feel like they are done processing, I'll say, like, do you want a hug? Do you want to sit by me? And maybe like they'll sit by me and we'll like watch the sunset, or like they'll come in my lap, and if it's a little girl, and like give me a hug and I'll hold her. And then I'll say like, did you know that I am 30? And like I have this beautiful house. We have chickens. And she's like, you have chicken? I'm like, yes, it's so fun. We get eggs.
There's always this amount of surprise. That part's like, wait, what? Hold on. Wait, what do you mean we have chickens and you're 30 years old? And I love that part. That's the best.
Yeah, yeah, it's so sweet. I'm actually like tearing up talking about it because I just feel like nothing has helped me love myself faster, than this. And when I do this work, I just feel such deep love for all of my parts and everything that brought me to who I am today. And that has what just really transformed my own relationship with loving myself. Loving yourself is it's easy, I think, to be like, yeah, I get my nails done. I love myself. And I like kind of, it's good to get your nails done, but like I'll treat myself to things. I love myself. And I do that too sometimes. And it feels like way more surface level. But when like something big comes up in life and I need to make a big decision, or I have a fear that's coming up, or I go through something challenging, can I love myself then? And if I have this relationship to all these different parts and this awareness of all these different parts in me, and I have a commitment within myself just to love within me whatever arises, then I am always there for myself and nothing could hurt me, right? Like no fear that I have or anxiety or like anything in life could happen. And it's like I love myself. And so therefore, like I am solid within myself and I'm always going to be there for myself. And it took me years of IFS to get to that place. And it is through like first loving my inner child and those like really tender young parts of me that I like totally exiled, and I was choosing deliberately to continue to exile. I knew they were there and I was like, I just really don't want to look at those because they bring me feelings of shame, or they're distressing to feel, like you were saying before. And I'd rather keep them in the box. But the moment that I started to just let myself feel the discomfort of turning towards them, the discomfort like moved through me so quickly, and so easily. So, anyway, going back to kind of on this process, when we are sitting with that part, we validate that part. And then what about kind of illustrating to them like where we are now? Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I also want to kind of touch on what you were saying of like that loving yourself and not being afraid to look at those parts of you. IFS also operates on the ideas there's no such thing as a bad part. None of them are trying to hurt you. Even if you end up doing a pattern that ends up being unhealthy or really bothers you, it's just your protective parts trying to protect you from something they feel is worse than whatever you just did. And so recognizing that there are no bad parts of you, it's just your system trying to protect you from something they feel is so bad and so negative.
Yeah, absolutely. There are no bad parts. That's what I like to tell my mamas. I'm like, you are perfect. And anything that comes up within you, it is perfect because it is part of you. And I think some of them are like, okay, I kind of understand what you're saying, but maybe I don't. But that's what I mean. There are no bad parts. And that is so huge to figure out. And for me, it's like ongoing. Like there's always like another thing that will come up in life. And then I'm like, oh hi, you, like a new part, and it's a part that like believes that it's bad maybe, or like I was resisting it still because I thought that it was bad, or I still like had something around it. But then recognizing like the depth of compassion that I've been able to find for all of me, for the parts that I used to think were so bad and made me kind of live with this just like back burner little bit of shame that just like held me back in life. Now I have transformed that into so much compassion for all of these different parts of me, and even a celebration of like just this recognition of like how perfect my psychology is, and how like all these things, these parts were created to protect me. Like, wow, that's amazing that I had that system, and I feel so compassionate towards all those parts. And then it's like, wow, now we can just reboot, like you were saying. We can just like give a little update now that we've like seen that, and it just like it feels like it just goes into the you go into the dark closet that you swore you would never open with love in your heart, and you just like sweep all the cobwebs away and turn the lights on, and what you find is just like more beauty of who you are inside.
Exactly. And like you said, you use that word, compassion and compassionate. Again, it's another 8C of self right there is if you when you can feel that compassion towards your parts, even when they're trying to get you to do something that you don't really like, bringing that compassion towards them of understanding why they're trying to get you to do that thing because they want to protect you is so important. And so I would, as weird as it sounds, I would tell those moms to listen to that voice that keeps coming up that you keep trying to push back. It has a message for you. It's trying to tell you something, whether it's the exile kind of playing telephone through the firefighter, the manager, and all the way up to self, or whether you have a direct line to it, is listen to that voice. It's usually coming from a good place of protection, and it's worth listening to and it's worth exploring.
This was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. Um yeah, so excited to share this with my mamas.
I do also have a little piece to kind of share about like what moms can do once they're down there with those
Yes.
exiles. Let the exiles sit with you. Let those protective parts sit with you. It's don't make them go away. Don't push them away. Invite them to come be present with you, to come experience that moment with you. Because again, it's that idea of showing them that it's going to be okay, that you have that support system. They don't know. They've been tucked down there for so long sometimes. It's that like that company. It's been sealed off. You got to go back in there and be like, "Hey, you want to come on out. Just witness the world. See what the company's actually doing," right? Invite the part to come sit up with you. Invite the little crying girl or the rageful teenager to just come sit with you. Don't change them. Don't push them down into the box. Let them just share the space with you and witness what is happening in reality is another really great way to help them let go of those fears.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Wow. When you were saying that, I had this thought of like, I just want to talk about this. So, you're becoming a mother, right? You're stepping into this new role of life and learning how to hold yourself so that you can hold your child. The mother is able to regulate, while we work on it, we're not perfect. We're not perfect, but we are, right, like regulating our nervous system, taking care of ourselves, and we're also taking care of our children and showing them that like that we're in a safe environment, and like, you know what I mean, even when things are like challenging, we're like holding um this I've where I'm trying to describe it, like I feel like I'm stepping up, and instead of like needing someone to hold me in the ways that I used to, I still need someone to hold me because I'm a human being, but I have a capacity that has expanded to be able to hold a container of safety and love within myself and within my family. And that's what we're learning to do when we step into motherhood. Birth offers this really beautiful opportunity to do that. And what better way to, um, model to our children the way that we want them to relate to ourselves than to begin relating to ourselves that way as we step into birth, holding the hand of all of the parts of us that we like have been resisting coming into birth, that have been like bringing us distress, and instead giving them an invitation. Like, I am giving you this handwritten invitation to my birth. Here you go. It's in your mailbox. Please come. And, and just be like, hey, like fear of tearing, and like, hey, fear of the vulnerability, and fear of being out of control, and fear of abandonment, like, I'm going into labor. Are you coming with me? Because we're not resisting them and we're not afraid of them anymore. And that is just reclaiming so much power back within ourselves, and taking that approach to going into birth, where we're really holding all of us within ourselves. Um, it just allows for such a more like empowering experience, because we're so empowered within ourselves in our relationship to those things that were squashing us. We felt like they were squashing us before. And then, like, if you could develop a friendship and a love and a compassionate relationship with some of the big fears in your life, like when it comes to declining that, whatever it is, thing that you might not want, I don't think it would be as hard anymore, because you've already shown yourself that you can do hard things. And then you turned out to, like, come out the other side feeling healthier and happier.
Right, and not necessarily an aspect of IFS, though definitely related to it, is like someone who's like, I'm scared of tearing, I'm scared of a C-section, I'm scared of whatever it is. There's, it's not necessarily the fear of the thing itself. It's actually the anxiety and not trusting yourself to handle the thing happening. And so it's, you could kind of follow this line of, what if I tear? Okay, what if I do? That's gonna suck. Yes, it's gonna suck. It might not suck, who knows? But it could very well suck. But you have to trust yourself to be able to handle the suck, if you will. Right? You have to trust yourself to handle it. So sometimes that anxiety is not a fear of the thing happening, but it's a fear of you not being able to handle the thing happening. And you have to trust yourself. You have the capacity to handle that. You have the support system in place. Those parts are not going to let you down. They're there to ultimately protect you. Trust yourself to handle the bad thing happening.
I love that. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. Is there like a specific practice that moms can do at home to just kind of help introduce them to some of this work?
Yes, it's not necessarily a practice so much as it is a book. It's Richard Schwartz's it's Introduction to Internal Family Systems. It is a relatively light read. It's not a clinical therapy book or anything, but it explains the concept of parts and how they protect you, how they show up, and gives you the language of IFS. And it also has some exercises throughout the book to help you identify parts and kind of go through that process in a self-led way. Um, and I always encourage my clients who are doing IFS work to start there because they're able to understand the language and the concepts of what are parts and how to identify them. And some of those exercises helps them explore that on their own. So when they come to a session, they can be like, I did this exercise in the book, and oh my goodness, it was this, right? And so that's a resource that I would share is the Introduction to Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz. It's an absolutely wonderful book. And then if they wanted to go maybe deeper in processing that, he does have a book called No Bad Parts, right? Which really shows how parts show up for trauma specifically, and shares a lot of the narratives of healing from that trauma. And so, not so much an exercise in particular, so much as those books, and starting with the Intro to IFS book is really wonderful.
Hmm. That's super helpful. Yay. Thank you so much. I feel like we um like got through a lot, like a really deep introduction to IFS, which is what I was hoping. And I hope this just inspires a little bit of a shift internally around the way that mamas relate to their fear, going forward. And the tools you shared, like getting a book, finding a therapist who you can bring this, the idea of IFS to guide you through it. It's a really, really great idea. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close?
Even though, in a way, obviously giving birth is it's you, right? It's you who's doing it. Remembering that you're not alone, whether it's all of the parts that are supporting you of your own internal system or the parts of your external system, your partner, your provider, the hospital itself, your friends that have a meal train afterward, your family that's got a routine to help support you. Know that you're not alone in it, right? You've got a lot of players. It's not you by yourself. You don't have to do it all by yourself and focusing on, oh no, this is me, this is my issue. No, it doesn't have to be. Share it with people, get their support, get the support from those parts that you have, because otherwise they might just be yelling like, hey, I have a way to help you. Can you listen to me? And you're just like, no, I've got this. Listen to those parts, listen to the people around you, know that you're not alone in that process, and really advocate. Share that process. Like I said earlier, share with your partner, like, hey, I've identified this exile, and here's what I'm doing to try and challenge my protective parts to, instead of doing template A, I would like them to do template B. So you have that support. Or even with your provider, be like, there's a chance I might just say yes in the heat of the moment. Can we have a code word? Can we have a checkpoint? Can you go, hey, lemons, right? And you know that lemons means, hold on, just checking as your provider. You've told me about this. Make sure, think about it for a second. Sometimes it's about having that kind of support too. Share what you're doing, share that process so people can support you in it when you might not be able to see it for yourself.
Totally. Yeah. So much of this can happen subconsciously, where we just kind of like switch right into one of these parts without even really realizing it. And we're operating from that place. And that is why we're not meant to do this work alone. We really need other people who can kind of be a mirror and reflect to us what they see. And the approach I like to support moms or encourage moms to take with advocacy is to be vulnerable and to be really honest. And, when we go in and we're like, I really don't want this thing. So I want to I feel like I have to fight with them and I have to have this information war. It's really not the best approach. But if you can be, I mean, I will say some providers are abusive people. That's a different situation. Most providers are really good people that want to do their best to take care of you. And if you feel safe with your provider, you feel like um, it's safe to do this, yeah, please be vulnerable and to share with them, like, I'm doing this work right now and I'm noticing this thing is coming up. And it would mean so much to me if you could support me with this and to create a plan together around that. Is such a great approach that will help you feel so much more supported and not alone doing this.
Right, and vulnerability, because like you said, that can even be an exile. To be vulnerable is to be afraid. You're exposing the worst parts of yourself, the parts that you might not even like to someone else, and it's really difficult. But that
Mhm.
vulnerability is a high risk, high reward type situation. Be vulnerable, say the thing. You never know what you might get back. It might be the best thing to be vulnerable. And so I would encourage that vulnerability too, that high risk, high reward, be vulnerable and see how that person does, see how they receive your vulnerability. And I think that's a way that you can kind of build that connection with a provider or your partner, is by being vulnerable and seeing how they respond to your vulnerability. That helps you assess for how they're
Mhm.
going to support you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. That's a great way to look for alignment when we're creating our birth team, is to, yeah, share that vulnerability and share what our preferences are and then see how people respond. And if people are like, really not interested in supporting your preferences, or they're really not receptive, or you walk away from that conversation not feeling supported or respected, that's a really good sign that that wasn't working with that person, and we might need to find a different person to help us. Yeah. Yay. Well, thank you, Arya, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was a beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope that it can support so many moms and just kind of opening their mind to creating a new relationship with their fear and approaching it in a different way.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for having me. I absolutely love talking about IFS. Like I said, it's my favorite model. I practice a lot of different models. I'm certified in different forms of cognitive behavioral therapy and so on and so forth. And but IFS, there's just something about it. It is so beautiful. It is such a unique process, and the the sessions I have with my clients where we get into IFS work are often the most beautiful and most transformative spaces. And I absolutely love it. So I'm happy to talk about it. And I hope some of your listeners are able to pull something from it that benefits them on their journey into becoming a mom.